Hi guys, it's time for another video. Um, Hope you guys are all safe and healthy at home. But I also hope that you're using this time to do as much work as possible. Unfortunately, we can't be together, but our school, our Manhao, has made it possible for us to continue providing you with quality education, even though we cannot be together at this time. Um, and that's what today's video is going to be about. We're going to continue providing you that quality education. Today, I want to talk about reading strategies rather, more specifically a descriptive and narrative text, and what differences they have there. So let's start with a narrative text. The purpose of a narrative text is to tell you a story, right? It's a piece of writing that will tell you about an event, um, something that has a beginning, that has a middle, and that has an end, which is the classic structure of a story. Let's look at some of the techniques. So when you are using narrative text, like I said before, it is to tell a story or an event. So something is happening or something is going to happen, right? These types of texts usually have characters, in other words, people that are doing something. It usually has a dialogue, in other words, people that are speaking. A dialogue means two people that are speaking together, two or more people that are speaking together. One person speaking by themselves is called a monologue, and a plot, right? A plot is what I described. It's an event. So it is a series rather of events, a series of events that lead up to one big event or one big finale. A plot is usually the majority of a story. Um, the third technique is that it has a definite logical beginning, interval, and endings, right? It's like I described the structure of any story, quite frankly, will have a beginning, it will have a middle section, and it will have an ending. Every story comes to an end, and that's what number 3 describes. Number 4 often has situations like actions, motivational events, and disputes or conflicts with their eventual solutions, right? So there's always something happening in a story, and that's what number 4 tells us, right? So there's either a problem that the character or the hero must solve. There's a bad guy that they must defeat. There's a conflict, a fight, um, and usually you'll have like a theme. And one of the common ones is the theme of redemption, where the hero doesn't feel good enough and has to prove himself through a series of actions, and through overcoming problems has to prove that he is worthy of being a hero. And that's what number 4 there talks about, situations, um, events, motivational events or emotional events that make a person better than what he wants. Disputes and or conflicts, that is the fighting, whether it's fighting with words or physical fighting, but just a conflict that the characters or a hero in the story has to overcome for the story to have meaning and the story to have values. Where do we find these kinds of texts? Usually in novels, of course, short stories, biographies. A biography is the story of a person, the real life story of a person. Anecdotes, which is a story that's meant to teach you a lesson, a short story that's meant to teach you a lesson. Sometimes in oral histories. So an oral history is the kind of history that your parents will pass on to you. So they'll teach it to you in stories, and then you will pass that on to your children, and your children will pass that on to their children. So, and usually there's always a good guy, there's always a bad guy, there's always a conflict in the narrative story, and there's always, and generally the idea that we are looking for is that good triumphs over evil. Always a common theory or theme and theory in many narrative texts. So that is it for narrative text. The second one that I want to look at is descriptive text. The purpose of a descriptive text, the main purpose, is to describe a character, an event, a place, or place in details. So if the narrative text is the whole story, right, then a descriptive text will be a certain portion of that story. So a writing or a piece of writing or chapter or a page where the writer describes a character, tells you, are they a good person? Are they smart? Are they tall? Are they short? Right? Think of the picture here that I've got down here, where we have all these different words that will describe a person, right? So optimistic, student, wears a red cap, popular, helpful, sociable, young, tall, frail, slim, right? So all these are just words that will help describe a person, right? But you can use similar synonyms in describing the character of a person, an event, or a place in great detail, or even a situation. So think about somebody would describe the sunset in Riyadh, all the colors in the sky, the changes of the mood as the city lights start to come on and the day slowly turns into night, that 2 hours of sunset, and you describe that in great detail, right? So let's look at some of the techniques. I've already discussed some of them, but let's look at them here in some structure. So it is often poetic in nature, right? So again, when you're describing something like a sunset, right, you're describing the beauty of that sunset. So it can sound very emotional, very poetic, very yes, you know, trying to make the author see what you are seeing, trying to paint a picture, in other words, of what you are seeing, but using words to do it. It describes places, people, events, situations, locations in a highly detailed manner. The author visualizes what he sees, hears, tastes, smells, and feels. So you take all those senses and you put them in a page, right? So you talk about all the colors that you see. You talk about all the sounds that you hear. And if you're talking about food, you'll talk about the color, the taste, the texture, right? So you'll give as much detail as you can, probably using a lot of different synonyms to describe what you're saying and to add to the degree of something, right? So if something is sweet, it can be very sweet, you know, delicious, you know, in how it tastes. The fourth one, the author visualizes, okay, so this is the same point, sorry. Save that later, right? So where do we find these? Again, you'll find those in poetry, right? Journals or diaries, right? This is, when we say journals here, we're not talking about academic journals, something that will be published. We're talking about people's personal journals where you write about your day and your feelings, right? So your journal and your diary, there'd be synonyms there. Nature writing is a very good example of this, where people describe what they see in the nature, the different flowers, different animals, the different events, the sunrises, the sunsets, the taste of the water, the smell of the wild, all of that we'll go into a descriptive text. Descriptive passages in fiction, right? Fiction, we're talking about novels, right? Now, this doesn't have to be just fiction. Real stories can also have beautiful descriptions, but generally, biographies try to stick to the facts. And this type of writing is very emotive and very emotional. So you'll usually find it perhaps in a lot of fiction and even advertisements, right? Which are the things that you see on TV. They come up and they try to make you buy things by describing something to be even more wonderful than what it really is, right? So these are the two kinds of text and reading strategies that we're looking at today, so that when you do see these kinds of texts, you're able to identify them and to even use them. I hope that this video has been helpful. Again, I hope that you're staying safe at home, and please expect more videos like this to come. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.